Alright, this is it. Meet the global version Vivo X300 Ultra. Just look at that camera bump. Is it really better than the already very capable Vivo X300 Pro? If so, by how much? We're about to find out for both photos and videos. Hey everyone, Ray here. Right, in this video we'll be digging really deep into the Vivo X300 Ultra, everything about the camera. We'll definitely be pushing it to the absolute limit, including video stabilization and photography in low light. Portrait photography, maximum resolution output under broad daylight, and that's for each of the three lenses here for sure, as we've got a much more advanced ultra-wide camera that's based on a 1/1.28 inches massive sensor. Now they're pushing the limit for the main camera as well, as we've got a 200 megapixels sensor as well this time around, and that's based on a 1/1.12 inches sensor. Now it's actually looking through a 35mm lens, which is quite rare on a smartphone. And finally, we've got the 200 megapixels system for the telephoto camera as well, and that's looking through the same 85mm lens, but that's got a sensor upgrade here as well. Maybe not a huge upgrade, but we're now able to record 4K 120 slow motion 8K videos on all the three lenses here. Video stabilization's got a lift up as well, and we'll certainly be looking into it as well. Now, apart from just the camera, the display and the footprint of the phone, the display here is now measured at 6.82 inches compared to the 6.78 inches display there. We've also got a slightly larger 6600 mAh battery here on the Ultra compared to the 6510 mAh battery there on the Pro. Now, IP68, IP69 water industry resistance, fingerprint sensor, and that's an ultrasonic fingerprint sensor, dual SIM and eSIM support, and dual speaker setup, and that's basically the same across the two devices here. Right, it's also worth a mention, the Ultra is actually running on the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5, while the Pro is running on the Dimensity 9500 chip. Is it making a day and night difference? Probably no. But here's a brief check on the processing power across the two models. In terms of CPU multi-thread performance, it's just alright, it's a modern flagship. And here's a bar chart that we can compare the performance of the Ultra and the Pro to other devices with the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5. What about sustained performance? Here we've run Antutu benchmark 4 times in a row. Certainly nothing is sounding the alarm. Right, moment of truth. For the rest of this video, we'll be mainly focusing on the camera. Is it really better than the Vivo X300 Pro? If so, by how much? Is it going to be enough to justify that camera bump? This is a genuine question. Right, the first round of today's test will be starting from the basic, comparing photos shot at their maximum resolution. So we have a 50 megapixels 1/1.28 inches sensor on the Vivo X300 Pro, which is quite normal. On the contrary, here on the Vivo X300 Ultra, for the first time ever, we've got a 200 megapixels sensor from Sony, and that's based on a 1/1.12 inch format. If I'm not wrong, that's actually larger than the one produced by Samsung, which is measured at 1/1.3 inches. We don't actually have a comparison yet, but we'll soon be doing it. While here, are we really going to do such an unfair test comparing 200 megapixels photos to those shot at 50 megapixels? Yes, we're doing it. Now, just to make the comparison even more unfair, we're actually comparing photos with a 35mm field of view to those with a wider 24mm field of view on the Pro. Now, here's the interesting bit. I do find the depth of the photos a little bit better here on the Ultra. For this, we might have to thank the larger sensor, which would normally give a wider dynamic range, which seems to be the case here. While in terms of the level of details, 50 megapixels is 50, while 200 is 200. Now, just to make sure whatever we've found here is real, we've got one more set of photos, shooting the same structure but from another angle. Now we can conclude the Vivo X300 Ultra isn't only capturing more details thanks to the 200 megapixels sensor, that's a must, but also photos are generally more 3D with more depth to it. Now, as the sun's dropped below the horizon, we could be expecting improved low-light performance as well, thanks to the larger sensor for the main camera. To me, it seems to be the case here, despite we're only comparing photos shot at their native focal length. We do have slightly more details and extra texture here on the Vivo X300 Ultra, but that could also be due to the longer 35mm focal length compared to 24 on the Pro. For a more definitive conclusion, we might have to move to area with even less light. This is it. Again, even at their native focal length, we do see a little bit more depth here on the photo shot on the Vivo X300 Ultra. Just look at the leaves and the tree trunk here. While in terms of details and texture, we do have a clear winner here. The Vivo X300 Ultra is the clear winner. Now, don't get me wrong, the Vivo X300 Pro isn't a garbage phone, it is a camera king alone. It was. Now, the Vivo X300 Ultra apparently is taking the crown, as expected. Now, frankly speaking, are you going to zoom in this much in day-to-day life? Possibly not, but you will certainly notice the difference if you're looking at your photos on a 75-inch TV, or using the photo as the wallpaper on a PC with a 5K monitor. Again, we are indeed comparing 35mm to 24mm, though in my opinion, the larger sensor and more advanced image processing algorithms could be playing an even more important role here. Especially in the upcoming test, we'll be pushing them to the absolute limit, capturing all these lights and shadows. First and foremost, the photo here shot on the Ultra appears to be higher in contrast and with extra sharpness. The highlights here is basically brighter, while the shadows even darker. In the meantime, we are getting more color information and more depth to the photos. Just look at here, all the warm lights here on the Vivo X300 Ultras rendered perfectly, while here on the Vivo X300 Pro it seems to be a little bit washed out. It's fascinating to see the Vivo X300 Ultras again taking a step further, even for the main camera as well. Alright, we definitely cannot skip the telephoto camera when it comes to 200 megapixels. Now this time around we are comparing 200 to 200 megapixels and 85mm to 85mm, much fairer. Now the major reason for me to do this is to reveal how they actually perform at their native focal length and possibly with less compression. Interesting enough, we are getting extra sharpness and texture here on the Vivo X300 Ultra. One more set of comparison just to make sure it's not a coincidence. Now we had a comparison photo shooting natural landscape and here a man-made structure. How is it even possible? We might have to ask Vivo for that. We are getting extra texture and sharpness here on the Vivo X300 Ultra. Now my best guess would be a newer generation of sensor for the telephoto camera that would normally be better. We have the HPB sensor on the Pro and a new HPO sensor on the Ultra. We are actually getting a new Vivo in-house dedicated image processing chip as well, an upgrade from the VS1 to the new VS1 Plus here on the Ultra. A newer sensor with the latest image processing chipset for better image processing. The photo does look sharper even at its native focal length. Moving on to the ultra-wide angle lens, this might just be the most significant upgrade over the Pro, as we've got a 1/1.28-inch sensor here on the Ultra compared to the 1/2.76-inch on the Pro. Now, if we really look into it, it's actually got the exact same sensor size as we've got on the Vivo X300 Pro on the main camera, while here on the Ultra they've actually put it on the ultra-wide lens. However, what does it even mean in real life? Now, a larger sensor captures more light, resulting in much better low-light performance and wider dynamic range in daytime. To begin with, we'll be comparing 50 megapixels output. Basically, that would be the best possible image quality out of each camera respectively. Now we are getting a brighter image and sharper image as well out of the Ultra, even under broad daylight. Now we're having a fair test here again, comparing photos with a similar field of view and the same 50 megapixels output. Alright, once again we've got a brighter image here on the Ultra, while the color's actually brighter as well. In the meantime, I've noticed Vivo's apparently boosted contrast on the Ultra compared to the Pro. The highlights appear to be brighter, while the shadows appears to be slightly suppressed. The quality of the lens itself is also improved. Just look at how it managed to suppress chromatic aberration here among the tree trunks and the leaves as well. So that's basically a generational upgrade for the ultra-wide angle lens, especially when we're moving on to low-light photography. In a moment, I'll be standing between the phone and the city lights and the water. Now, as you can see, I was actually standing underneath a tree which blocked surrounding lights. To begin with, we're not using the flash. Who's the winner? In my opinion, the Vivo X300 Ultra definitely delivered a much brighter image. It also captured my skin tone much more accurately, as well as all the colors and details on the highlights on the background. What do you think? Can you tell the difference on your phone screen? Now with the flash on, there's actually an issue on the Pro which I've mentioned in previous videos as well. It tends to give a greenish tint using the flash on the ultra-wide lens. They've clearly solved the problem here on the Ultra. The photo here is much brighter with a much more accurate white balance. And even if we're just capturing the city landscape, I do notice the Vivo X300 Ultra did a much better job preserving all the colors and details on the highlight. The ultra-wide camera on the Ultra here is delivering photos that are brighter, sharper in colors and sharper in details as well. Just look at how the Ultra demolished the Pro here on the ultra-wide lens. So basically the highlights overexposed here on the Pro, while all the colors and highlights well preserved on the Ultra is also sharper as well. Again, it's more like we're looking at a generational upgrade comparing the Ultra to the Pro here. So up to this point, I have no idea if they're going to use the same large sensor on the ultra-wide lens on their next generation of Pro models. It's doing a much better job in delivering photos with wider dynamic range, sharper colors and details, less noise and greater contrast. Again, the photo here shot on the Ultra is much sharper and solid compared to the Pro. We should be looking at the absolute best ultra-wide lens on the market right now. Alright, you might have been thinking Vivo's implemented algorithms and all the magic touch to the photos, while here for video recording, should I be happy about it? It's a day and night difference on the ultra-wide lens. Right here on the Ultra, you can actually see the slightly bluish night sky, which was how it looked like. You've got a much brighter image with more depth for the trees and the leaves as well. It's really interesting to see Vivo's actually differentiating the Ultra model from the Pro variant mainly through the wide main camera and the ultra-wide lens, not so much on the telephoto. Now it's a really great device, outstanding device for video capturing, especially in low light. We're talking about a 1/1.28-inch sensor here on the ultra-wide lens. Everything you're seeing would be much sharper with much less noise. Alright, it won't be reflecting real-world use if we're only shooting videos with a tripod. Moving on to video stabilization. The most prominent change here on the Ultra is Ultra Stabilization mode is now available on all the three lenses here, including the ultra-wide lens. Compared to here on the Vivo X300 Pro, we have support for the main and the telephoto camera. I would say it wasn't a huge issue on the Pro, as it's not difficult to get a stable video with the ultra-wide lens thanks to the wider field of view. Now here, I was walking down the stairs, a typical challenging scene. They actually performed relatively similarly, though I would say the video here on the Ultra looks a little bit more stable with less jitter effect. Now the real difference might actually happen here when it comes to extreme scenarios. Vivo's actually given the Ultra horizontal lock mode. This is new for Vivo. The good news is it works even when I rotate the phone 90 degrees to the left and to the right. In fact, the video is going to stay rock stable even if you're rotating the phone a whole 360 degrees. Now the not so great news is it's cropping in even further and is recording in Full HD instead of 2.8K. Now normally I would recommend to keep this feature off for a sharper video, though possibly for diving and skiing videos recording, that would be a really great feature to have. Moving on to the main and the telephoto lens, normally it would be even more difficult to keep a video stable when we're shooting on a lens with a longer focal length. We can confirm here, despite the Ultras having a 35mm lens for the main camera, the videos coming out of these phones actually just as stable as those shot on the Pro, if not even more stable. And just before we jump to the conclusion, here we have another test that is even more challenging. As you might probably see here, the video shot on the Ultras not only a little bit more stable, but also richer in colors and higher in contrast, so only for a slight margin for sure. Moving on to the telephoto camera, we'll be doing the same test here. We've actually done the same exact test on every phone we've tested before. For now, in this video, the Vivo X300 Ultra is indeed delivering a slightly more stable video compared to the Vivo X300 Pro. Once again, the colors and contrast appear to be slightly richer on the Ultra compared to the Pro. Now, if we really dive into the spec sheet, the Ultra's actually got CIPA 7.0 stabilization compared to CIPA 5.5 on the Pro model, so it is definitely reasonable to get more stable videos out of the Ultra compared to the Pro. I would say most of the time you might not be able to tell the difference if you're just walking and shooting a video. Again, the only chance for you to see the difference would be when you're pushing it to the absolute limit. Alright, 4K 120 is another bonus here on the Ultra. You're getting 4K 120 support on all the three lenses here on the Ultra, including the ultra-wide lens, compared to 4K 120 support for the main and the telephoto camera here on the Vivo X300 Pro. Now that's a 4K 4x slow motion video shot on the Ultra using the ultra-wide lens. Is it a must-have? I would say probably no, but it's a really great bonus to have, as you're getting the consistency here, 4K 120, 8K support for all the 3 lenses. Alright, is it truly where smartphone photography is heading towards, as Vivo's definitely normalizing their teleconverter for their upcoming devices as well? We've got the 200mm teleconverter for the X300 Pro that works here on the Ultra as well, while here we've got a new 400mm teleconverter that is larger and heavier. Well, I say heavier, it actually weighs about 230 grams. It's almost like you're holding an extra phone. Well, I guess it totally depends on do you actually need it. Here we've got a quick comparison, zooming all the way to 100x here on the Ultra if we're using 24mm as the reference point. Now here, the photo shot with the teleconverter on the Vivo X300 Ultra. Even if I was zooming all the way to 3200mm here with a teleconverter, which is greater than 100x on a normal smartphone, I reckon I do not have to explain the differences here. The only question I've got here is it still shot on the phone? Technically yes, but not itself alone. Again, if you find yourself really into ultra long-range zoom, the X300 Ultra performs nearly identically to the X300 Pro for the phone alone, so with the extra bit of help from the 400mm lens that is new and designed to work with only this phone, it would be on another level if you're comparing it to the 200mm lens on the Pro. Alright, back to the phone itself. Portrait photography here on the Ultra might be another area that requires extra time for you to get used to, as we're talking about jumping directly from 14mm to 35mm here. Now, 35mm might be more popular than 24mm on a proper DSLR or mirrorless camera for street photography and portrait photography, so we're not going to debate here if it's better than 24mm. On the contrary, what we're going to look into is the ultra-wide lens here. Vivo's given the ultra-wide lens support for portrait mode as well. Just look at how accurate it renders, separate the subject from the background, even when I was standing way further from the phone and only taking up a tiny portion of the frame. On the Pro, you've got 24mm, while here on the Ultra, you've got 14 and 35mm. Speaking of the ultra-wide lens here on the Ultra, the 14mm lens, I'm actually quite a big fan of using the ultra-wide lens for selfie portrait, despite we're losing the viewfinder when we're shooting a photo, though I'm 100% sure the photo itself would be much better than if we're using the selfie camera on a phone. Now, the ultra-wide lens here is truly better than the one on the Vivo X300 Pro, possibly better than most other phones as well. We'll have to test that out later on. In a moment, I'll be standing right here, marking the distance between where I'll be standing and the phone. This way, you'll be able to compare the field of view of 24mm lens and a 35mm lens. Right, you'll be getting a wider field of view on a 24mm lens as expected, while you'll be able to concentrate a little bit more on the subject if you're using the 35 lens here. Now, in terms of edge detection and bokeh rendering, we are comparing 24mm to 35mm, not exactly a completely fair competition here. What would be fair though is that we'll be using the realistic beauty mode here on the Vivo X300 Ultra and the Pro. We do have a radiant mode as well with even more pronounced beauty effect. Of course, you can always switch that all off like I used to do on other comparison videos, so this time around it's actually quite interesting to compare how they render the skin tones, especially when the portrait effect is on. For both this photo and the previous one we've just compared, I do find the contrast seems to be a little bit higher here on the Ultra. It also comes with slightly elevated color saturation. In general, portrait photos shot on the Ultra appears to be slightly brighter with higher contrast and color saturation. In my opinion, it actually adds depth to the photo. The highlights will be brighter, while the shadows actually looks like it's in the shadows. Now, the Pro is actually able to capture photos at both 35mm and 50mm through digital crop. Then it comes to 85 and 135mm. On the other side of the story, you've got 14mm, 35, 50, 85 and 135mm on the Ultra. The only difference, other than the skin tones and the contrast, as you can see right here, would be 14mm on the Ultra versus 24mm as the starting point on the Pro. Meanwhile, 135mm actually roughly about 5.66 zoom from 24mm. They've clearly nailed edge detection and background separation for this generation of flagship. For sure, this is not limited to just Vivo, but they're doing pretty well here. Now with the flash, again we're comparing 24mm to 35mm field of view. What do you think in terms of skin tone and contrast rendering? In my opinion, I do prefer the slightly brighter highlights and the more 3D effect here on the Ultra. It does make the photo here looks a little bit more true to life, while in terms of edge detection and background separation, they do perform roughly the same. Right, portrait videos worth mentioning as well. We've done an extensive comparison just for video recording recently. Now, is it a huge upgrade when it comes to portrait video recording, comparing the Ultra to the Pro? I would say no again, but the extra mile here is we've got portrait video mode support for the ultra-wide angle lens here on the Ultra again. Now, they're actually doing pretty good separating the main subject from the background, even for video recording. In my opinion, it will always be a great bonus to have support for the ultra-wide-angle lens as well. Better than nothing. Now, for this particular video, I was at least standing 5 to 6 meters away from the phone, shooting on the 85mm lens using the portrait video mode. While they're not perfect, I would say for social media content it would be a solid pass. Last but definitely not least, the last round of today's test would actually be ultra-long-range zoom. Now, zoom capabilities might have been the major factor which captured our eyeballs to the Vivo X300 Pro at the very first place. Don't get me wrong, it's easily one of the best out there, though interesting enough for the Ultra apparently is not the top priority here. Without the 400mm teleconverter, it basically performed identically to the Vivo X300 Pro, which itself is really great for long-range zoom. If you're looking for even better zoom quality compared to the Pro, you would be disappointed here without the teleconverter. Though based on my experience and all the tests we've done today, it's quite fair to say the Vivo X300 Ultra is a much more all-rounded camera phone, not only focusing on extra long-range zoom. Instead, it's got a much better main and ultra-wide-angle camera, especially the ultra-wide lens. Ultimately, in my opinion, there could be two types of people who could consider upgrading from the Pro to the Ultra, even if you're already owning the Pro. 1. Video content creator. The ultra-wide-angle lens here is absolutely breathtaking. You'll be ending up with much better video quality using the ultra-wide lens here, considering the 1/1.28-inch sensor. 2. If you're using the main camera more often than the telephoto. A larger sensor with more megapixels, you will ending up with better image quality and video quality as well. And for zoom, the extra mile here actually happens outside of the phone, on the teleconverter. Generally speaking, it's a much more all-rounded camera phone, not just about zoom this time around. So that's pretty much it. If you would like to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe and see you all next time.